You want your audience to be able to read what's going on in your shot right away. You don't want them sitting there trying to guess what the purpose of your shot is. Yes, the 12 principles of animation are super important, but without clarity, nothing really matters. But no fear, because I'm here. There are a few elements or aspects of your shot that you need to take into consideration and combine to get that sweet, sweet clarity. And some of these are part of the 12 principles list. The first thing you need to do, and you would think that this is obvious, but a lot of people speed right past it because they're so eager to get into the actual animation of the shot, but you need to sit down and assess your shot and the point or purpose behind it. Boil it down to the bare bones of what you're trying to communicate to your audience. And if your shot doesn't have a purpose, get rid of it. It shouldn't be in your animation if it doesn't have some sort of a purpose. Then it's just wasting people's time. Even if the purpose is just to set a mood, or if it's an actual catalyst to your whole story, every single shot you have in your animation should have some sort of a purpose. So sit down and assess the purpose of your shot. And then thumbnail, very simply, your best action options for achieving this, for communicating this to your audience. And give yourself a few options here. Don't just sit down and sketch one out and think, all right, that's cool, I'm gonna go with that one, because very rarely is our first choice our best choice, at least not in its raw form. You will need to sit down and go through a few different options and finesse what you have there to see what really communicates the most strongly to the people watching your animation. You'll always need some sort of refinements and adjustments to your thumbnailing and your planning out. I've done videos before on these first steps in planning your animation, thumbnailing, shot choices, storyboarding, all that stuff. So if you do want to learn a bit more in depth about that stuff, you can check it out in my animation workflow playlist. I'll link to it in whichever corner that pops up in. But while you're going through this process of planning your shot, you need to consider at all times the clarity and how you can best improve on what you're planning out to make sure that your shot's message and intentions are coming through really clear to your audience. Firstly, what is your character thinking or feeling? Animation is very heavily dependent on body language. Well, for the most part, if you're doing character animating, obviously there's different types, but for character animation, your body language is very, very important, and their actions need to clearly show what they're thinking and feeling. Your audience needs to understand your character's motivations for whatever actions they're busy doing. Otherwise, they're going to be completely in the dark and they're going to lose interest if they don't actually understand what is going on. They ideally need to be able to empathize with your characters in some way, build some sort of a connection with them, and they can only really do that if their motivations and feelings are clear. It's all well and good to have technically great animation, but if there's no actual shot clarity, if your audience doesn't know what the hell's going on, you're going to lose them eventually. And that's not what you want. You want to keep their attention. You want to make them feel things. You want them to have empathy for your characters, and you achieve that through shot clarity. You also need to think about where your beats are and how they support your shot's purpose. A beat is basically an emotion or an idea or a situation, and any change in that emotion or idea or situation is a new beat. I have mentioned beats before and explained them in my other videos, but basically, say you have two friends at school talking about someone behind their back. That's one beat, the thing or idea that's currently happening. Then the person they're talking about comes into the shot and approaches them. They notice and their body language changes. That's the next beat. Because now they're a little shifty, the mood has changed. It's a little bit orkies because they were just talking about this dude. So he approaches them, and in the next beat, they turn to welcome the other person, acting super friendly, and the new person is none the wiser that he was just the subject of their gossiping. The mood has changed 3 times. There were those 3 beats of the change in the ideas and mood. So let's say now you know what you want to communicate with your shot. You've plotted out your actions, you've planned out your beats and where you're going to hit them. What more do you want from me, I hear you say? Well, I will tell you. You still haven't guaranteed clarity in your shot. You're like 32% there. Give your key poses the respect that they deserve. They are the backbone of your animation. Make sure that each one is really strong and has a clear silhouette. Once you've plotted out your key poses, a great way to check their strength and clarity is by turning off the lights in a flat shaded viewport so you just see the black silhouette of your character, and see if each pose is still easily readable. Watch your negative and positive space. Sometimes a pose can be strengthened just by slightly adjusting some limbs or the angle of your body, or tweaking your line of action. But sometimes you also just need to rethink the pose and maybe find a stronger way of communicating that idea or action. Keep your shots as clean as possible. Don't just throw in a bunch of superfluous actions that have no actual purpose. Less is more. There's a reason that that's a saying. It applies here too. This is a really easy and common trap for especially inexperienced animators to fall into. Either they can tell that their shot is lacking something, so they just shove in a bunch of purposeless animation to try and fill it up and take away that empty feeling, or they just try to show off how great they are at animating and they put in these unnecessary actions to try and show off a little bit, but it just takes away from the clarity of the shot because in the end, it doesn't match the purpose or the point of the shot or what the character is needing to communicate. Simplify the amount of key poses in your shot. Get it down to what is genuinely the barest of bare necessities. Say you have a character that's excited to see someone and the door starts to open, so they're really amped, they're super excited, but then someone else who isn't the person they were expecting walks in the door, so now they're super bleak because they were excited and now they're disappointed. Happy, sad, excited, disappointed. Those are the two main or key poses. Yes, there is some shit that's going to be happening in between. You know, the subtle nuances of expressions and the emotions that go through someone's face as they experience these changes in emotions. But essentially, when you look at it, it's two dominant or key poses or emotions that your character is feeling there. Don't make the mistake of trying to over-animate in between because the intention will become muddy. That's why you need to be clear yourself from the beginning on what the intention of the shot is and what you're trying to portray. Because everything you animate should have an intention. You shouldn't just animate something just because, like you have no real reason for doing it. That is not going to guarantee that you have a clear shot. In fact, the complete opposite. Make sure that what you're doing is intentional and that there is a solid reason behind it. The next step you can take to improve your clarity in your shot is with exaggeration. You obviously don't want it to be cartoonish or clowny or overboard if that's not the vibe you're going for with your shot, but you also don't want it to be so subtle that your audience actually misses it. So there's a fine balance here because you don't want it to look clumsy, especially if it's an emotional, serious scene. There's going to be these micro expressions and subtleties that you need to include in your character to make it believable and have the audience empathize with them, but you also don't want them to actually miss those subtleties. A lot of the time in animation, you do need to exaggerate things a little more than they would be, you know, in live action or real life. So you can bring that exaggeration in not only through the pose of your character, but also in things like timing and spacing, overshoot, follow through, anticipation, and of course, obviously, their expressions. The last really important element for clarity is your staging and your framing. You need to place a lot of importance on your focal point, which is where your audience eye is being led, and how you're supporting that with your staging, your composition, and your acting. A good idea is to study actual stage and live action camera acting techniques. See your characters as actors. They need to follow the same rules as live action actors do for camera acting. Your character should always be open to the camera and always have their actions easily readable. And when I say open to the camera, I mean that if the camera's over here and I'm doing some sort of an action with one of my hands, I'm reaching for something or something like that, I should reach for it with my left hand so that I'm not blocking myself off from the camera. It's the same thing as with live action actors. You always need to be conscious of where your camera is, and your characters need to act towards the camera so that the audience will always be privy to what's going on with your characters. They'll always be able to easily read them. You should never have your character turning their face away from the camera or doing something off camera side, because then the audience is not going to easily be able to see what's going on, unless it's purposefully to create intrigue and you don't actually want the audience to see. But then it must be very obvious that that is the purpose for that, for the fact that they can't actually see what's going on. You can also use techniques like creating a visual hierarchy. So if you have one character saying something really important, you could have them in the foreground and the others in the middle background. Or you could have one character standing and speaking and all the others sitting. Or you can have all the other characters stop and have very minimal movement, while the one you want all the attention on does the majority of the movement. There are other techniques that you can use to support your focal point, which I do go more in depth with in one of my other videos, which is part of that animation workflow playlist. It's the one about framing and shot composition. So if you do want to learn more about that, you can check out that video and see it go a little bit more in depth. Keeping clarity at the forefront of your mind while you're planning your animation and while you're busy animating, it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of stress and a lot of frantic questions to yourself about why your shot is not working. A lot of the issues you might experience while animating, if your shot is looking weak or muddy and you just don't understand why, can be boiled down to these points. Let me know in the comments what you think and if you have any of your own tips for ensuring clarity that I maybe didn't mention in this video. Thank you as always to my lovely patrons. You guys rule and I always appreciate you. Hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit the notifications bell to keep up with other videos. Thanks for watching, guys. Love ya. Bye.